Last class we have discussed what is literature and what are the main theories of literature regarding its functions. So today we will talk about what are the main classes of literature. So means actually the word used for classes of literature is genre, that is a French word. Means what are the types of literature. The genre, the word genre is basically means kinds of literature. So before entering into a study of literature, you should have an idea about what are the different kinds of literature, different classes of literature, right? So basis of classification. There are different bases for classification of literature. First, you could see based on a form there are different classification. For example, poetry and prose. Poems are patterned in a lines, so that is in a poetic. You could say I have written this in a poetic form, or in a prose form. Prose form is continuously running lines without any patterning of lines. Okay, for example, if you write a poem in a blank page, obviously there would be a lot of blank spaces, right? Means you have to maintain each and every line. In one line, means there would be blank spaces on the two sides of the pages, because you have to keep the pattern of the line. But that is not the case with prose. Okay, based on the form and based on the point of view of the narrator. For example, if the narrator is talking in first person using the pronoun I or we, then we could say this is a first person narrative. Or it is the narrator is in a second person. Very rarely happens second person narrative also. Okay, and third person narrative is very common, where the writer is describing about a third person or a character. So that is based on the point of view of the author. Then based on the nature of reality, there is fiction and non-fiction. Fiction means which is not real, which does not correspond to reality, means which is imaginative. If you are writing a poem, or if you are writing a novel about a place called Katta, and there is no place like Katta, and you are writing about an imaginative place with some imaginative characters, in movies and all you will find this science fiction and all those things, you will find a lot of imaginative characters and places. So these are examples of fiction. Okay, there are different varieties of fictions over there. And non-fiction is if we are talking in a very real sense, talking about a reality. Okay, not an imaginative thing but a real thing. You are talking about Bihar and its importance and the education system of Bihar, then that is, you could say that is a non-fiction, not a fiction. You are not talking in an imaginative world, but you are talking about a real world in a real realities. Okay, that is fiction and non-fiction. Okay, and what are the basic classification? What are the basic classes of literature, basic kinds of literature? Poetry, prose, drama, and novel. These are some of the basic classification of literature. Poetry, which is, we will come to that in a there are one, I have taken two definitions of poem. One is from Britannica Encyclopedia. There are different definitions, okay. So one definition is literature that evokes means create, a concentrated imaginative awareness of experience or a specific emotional response through language chosen and arranged for its meaning, sound and rhythm. Okay, means if you are talking about a reality and creating a sense of emotion in the people with a very carefully chosen language. While you are writing a poem, you will think about what are the words you are supposed to use. No, once you will strike it down and then you will select another word, means it should be musical, it should be rhythmic, it should match the overall sound imagery of the poem. So that kind of a writing is called poem. One another definition is that is this I have taken from Wikipedia. A form of literature that uses aesthetic and rhythmic qualities. Aesthetic means the judgment of beautiful. You are enjoying or you are appreciating some that beauty. So the aesthetic and rhythmic qualities of language. Aesthetic is something connected with content. If you are talking about a beautiful flower, or if you are talking about a beautiful experience in your mind, or anything like that, that can be aesthetic. Means your sensory imagination, your sensory expression. And language means the what language you are using, it should be very much rhythmic and musical sounds and symbols you have to use. So that is a kind of a rough definition of poem. And poetry obviously is the oldest form of literature. There would be if you are for any, not only the students of literature, for anyone, they should have a kind of a curiosity, what is the first form of literature? Obviously it's poetry, according to scholars of literature. Why? Because the essay, the writing of essay and novel and other kind of a non-fiction things have emerged very recently. Means in the 17th or 18th century, not before that. But essay is long before, but I am talking about novel, okay. But the poem, it was, poetry is as old as human being. Human being cannot survive without poetry.
Yeah.
That's why poetry is the earliest piece of literature. Why poetry is the earliest piece of literature? Because poetry has two qualities, right? As I told you, it should be rhythmic, it should be musical. So what is rhythmic and what is musical can be communicated very easily, right? Can be, if you are telling me, if you are giving me some message in a very rhythmic voice, I'll remember that message, right? Then I'll exchange it or I'll share it with somebody else and they will share it to somebody else. That is what happened in an oral tradition. Oral tradition means where there was no writing, there was no actual writing. People communicated or people shared their literary creations through words from mouth to ears, right? So in that kind of a situation, poetry was the earliest form of literature because poetry can survive without the technique of writing. And then rhythm and musical qualities, it should be rhythmic. Rhythmic means, having a combination of a different sounds, rhythm, music. Then pattern in lanes. Poetry obviously it should be written in the forms of lanes. It is not continuously running lanes, but pattern in a clearly patterned lines. In the traditional sense, it should have very kind of same kind of length. For every lane should be very same kind of a length, same kind of a syllable, same kind of a stress. I know you are wondering what is this syllable and stress, that we will discuss in coming classes. Now simply understand kind of a same kind of a sound. If we are using the same kind of a sound, then only in the one line, if you are using a sound, a one syllable monosyllabic sound, like yes is a monosyllabic sound. Means if you are using a small words and long words, if you are using a small word, then at the next line in the same space you have to use small words, okay. Means then there is meter. Meter is number of syllables and patterns of stress, okay, that we'll discuss in coming classes. And nowadays we have something called free verse. Without any meter, you can write lines as if you are talking it out. So Now, vers libre, that is the recent poetry. You don't have to, you don't have to master this art of writing meter. Now, next we have prose. Now, if poetry is defined, then prose is very easy thing. Prose is a spoken or a written word not patterned into lines. Means any written thing or any spoken thing which is not patterned into clear-cut lines, you can call it a prose. For example, essays, novels, our exam, answer books, they are patterned in the form of an essay or a prose form. Okay? So prose we have discussed, and what is poetry? A basic understanding, a very basic thing. Then we have drama. Okay? Drama is something that's meant to enact in the stage. It is basically for the performance. Some characters are coming. Okay? Obviously in the drama there would be characters and there would be a plot. Okay, and characters are performing it. There would be action, right? In the novel, a novel can happen without any specific or clear-cut action. But drama, it's, if it is meant to performance, it should have some kind of action, some kind of dialogues. And there are different varieties of drama recently when, the theater of absurd and all, we will discuss later, okay, where the plot is not important. Designed for performance in the stage, characters, and one character is saying a dialogue and another character is responding to that dialogue. All that dialogues, all actions are performed in the stage. Means drama is a kind of a plot or a story which is written to perform in the stage, to be performed in the stage. So obviously first character says this, and in answer to that, the response to that dialogue, another character says something. So there would be a sequential order of dialogues and characters' appearance. Okay. So that is poem, that is poetry, drama, and then another one thing is novel. Novel is a long narrative, a long story, a long narrative in prose. If it is in the verse, if it is in the poetic form, we cannot, call it a novel. Novel is something written in a prose, but very, which has a greater magnitude, which is very lengthy. Okay, so how much long it should be, that critics are giving different scales, but that doesn't matter. It should be lengthy, and there should be varieties of characters as well. Okay, novel is, you are very familiar with the novel. Novel is, recent in origin. Okay, it's only in 18th or 17th century, means 1755, in around that period, novel emerged as a form of literature. Sometimes, in the most of the students of literature, the students of BA English, they are making a mistake. Shakespeare wrote famous novel. That's a blunder, because Shakespeare, then the form of the genre of novel was not there in the time of Shakespeare. Yeah, that all those things we will come to discuss. So these are the basic classification: poetry, prose, and drama, novel. These are the basic classification, basic genres of literature. What is poetry? It is metric, musical, emotion. These are important. And prose, and what is not poetry is obviously prose. In prose you have running lines. And drama is something that is meant for performance in the stage. In the performance, there would be stage would be there, characters would be there, dialogue would be there, action would be there. And in novel, it's a long narrative in prose. If it is in verse, we cannot call it novel. Okay? So these are the basic things. You should have a basic idea. And whenever we are going to some particular genres, if we are talking about a novel and all, then we will go into some detail. Now I think this is sufficient for us to start. Okay, and the day after tomorrow we will discuss our syllabus and start with poem, I guess. Okay, that's all. And if you have any doubts, you can ask in the group.